I'm excited to share with you guys today the first card I have in my coolest card series. Believe it or not, as much as I hate winter, I love snowmen and snowflakes. I have quite the collection of snowman stamps, and I thought it would be fun to put together a series of cards to inspire you to create some fun snowman cards. Let's get started. So here's the card that I'm going to be creating for you today. I used some older Rosie's Roadshow rubber stamps. I just love them. I love the small size and the really cute sentiments that she has. And then I also used some of the chunky white embossing enamel from Stampendous. This is really fun, and I spotted it at one of the local stores I teach at. And I also am using it in white and shabby chic pink. I'm using the white Wink Estella glitter pen and Memento Gray and Hero Arts chalk ink and punch. I tend to use a gray ink when I'm doing snowmen because I think it looks a little bit more realistic. When you build a snowman for real and you look out at the landscape, they don't really have a harsh black outline, so I like to use gray. I'm also using the 12 by 12 Peace, Love, and Joy papers from Lawn Fawn. I promise the next video that I do won't be with these papers, but I just love them so much. And I'm also using just a little bit of watercolor pencils to add some color to the snowman. So let's get started. I'm going to start by stamping the snowman 3 times across this card. This is just a Rick Rack note card that I had in my stash. Now that I have the snowmen stamped, I'm actually going to watercolor pencil their hats and their carrot noses. I just do a little bit heavier coloring on the left-hand side and just a light coloring on the right-hand side, just to add a little bit of shading. I'm going to use the EK Success water brush. These are my favorite water brushes, and I've had them for a very long time. But I think that they work really well and they don't blob or drip water when they're not supposed to. As I color with watercolor pencils, I just swish my brush on scratch paper in between just to clean the brush off from the previous color. I'm just drying the watercolor pencil a little bit before I assemble. I cut down one of the memory box red note cards. It was A2 and I cut it down to be 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. I'm just using a dot runner to adhere my snowman layer and my pattern paper layers to the card. Now that the pattern papers are all down on the card, I'm going to start doing the embossing. For the snow piles that are at the bottom of the snowman, I'm actually just going to use my embossing pad reinker and use that directly on the card. So I'm just squeezing a little bit out here and there where I want my snow piles to be. And I'm mainly focusing on filling in the bottoms of the snowman where the blue rickrack is running through. You could also use your Versamark reinker for this step as well. Once I have all of the embossing reinker applied, I'm going to put my card in my tidy tray and pour the Shabby Chic pink embossing enamel from Stampendous. And I just gently pat it into the embossing liquid just so that it will stick really well. And now I'm going to use my Ranger heat tool to emboss it. I'm just gently moving the card around a little bit because I don't want to scorch the white of the paper. So you can see the snow at the bottom of the card. There's a lot of extra gold glitter that comes in that embossing powder all around my card, so I'm just going to flick the back of the note card to get some of that off. Now we're going to create the snowflakes that I have falling down from the sky. For this, I'm using just a plain white embossing enamel from Stampendous. This is a chunkier embossing powder than what you might normally be used to. So all I'm going to do for this is pinch some in my fingers and sprinkle it along the card where I want the snowflakes to be. Any extra powder that gets in the way of the images, I'm just going to move it away from that spot. I didn't want any of the snowflakes to be on the snowmen's faces. I'm going to add just a little bit more. And now I'm going to heat this up with the heat tool. I find that it works a lot better to actually heat it up from underneath. Again, I didn't use a Versamark pad or embossing ink pad to do this part. Once the enamel melts, it'll be on that paper permanently. So you can see the snowflakes here. Just going to set that aside and work on stamping my sentiment. As I mentioned earlier, I cut down my note card, so I'm actually just going to use a piece of that scrap to stamp my sentiment on. I'm using the Hero Arts chalk ink in Punch. This is a nice red, and it stamps nice and crisply with the smaller sentiments. I'm going to cut the sentiment into a banner. So I'm going to trim the ends down a little bit. And then you take your scissors and eyeball the center and cut a little slit, and then match up the corner to the end of the slit. And each time you do this, you'll have a perfect pennant. You can see how nice that looks. So now I'm going to tie my ribbon around the card. I do not do bows. I do bows once in a while with twine, but definitely not with ribbon. So I end up doing knots most of the time, and to get them nice and tight, I throw down the pinky of my left hand since I'm right-handed. And that stays in place as I pull tight the rest of the ribbon into a nice knot. I slip my pinky out. It takes a little bit of practice, but after a few times, you'll have the hang of it. Scooch my ribbon to the left a little bit more. And now I'm going to get some foam tape to add my sentiment onto the card. You can see I have a massive roll of foam tape here. I love foam tape. I think it's a lot easier to work with than the Pop Dots. You can cut it to be the size that you want. You could double up the thickness if you want, and the backings are a lot easier to peel off. Stick my sentiment on, and now I'm just going to add a little bit of the white Wink of Stella glitter pen on the white parts of the Santa hats. So you can see my card here. There is a little bit more of that gold glitter that's kind of hanging out. So I'm just going to use a dry paintbrush and brush my card to get rid of any of the stray gold glitter that isn't melted into the enamel. Trim up my... And there we go. We have the first snowman card of my coolest card series for this year. And as always, follow me at shirkus.com. Thank you for watching.